One of the most frightening aspects of the species shift is the fact that we're responsible for it. Human beings are responsible for most of the plant invaders in the entire U.S. We've planted them in our gardens, and they've escaped into the wild, wreaking havoc all along the way. In fact, a species shift is occurring right now, all along the banks of the Noxious, as knotweed pushes out all the native plants and the animals that rely on those plants for food.
You should be very upset about it, and you should be very concerned about it. For many reasons, ethically, we have a responsibility to work on this plant to reduce it. Since it was introduced as a horticultural introduction, it was brought here by people for gardens, and it's now so widespread. We have a responsibility to work to manage it as much as possible to reduce the populations.
I know this plant is on the weed list, but it's so beautiful, and I've never had any problems with it.
We're seeing that actually weeds or plants, when they first come in, are perfectly fine, and they're what we call well-behaved, and we don't have a big problem with them, and they stay where they're supposed to. But then you never know if, after a few years of genetically altering itself, and with the acclimation to the environment, a lot of these plants will just take off.
My pond isn't connected to any other waterways. It doesn't really matter what I put into it. It's not like it's going anywhere.
The plants can be spread by not only the ducks and the geese and other waterfowl that might use it, but by small animals too, like raccoons and mink and nutria and muskrats and beavers. So if any of those come to your pond, they can either pick up plant fragments or actual seeds, and then they'll carry them to the next pond or lake that they go to. It might be that you don't have a pond that connects to a stream or another pond, but if we had a lot of rainfall, your pond may overtop your dam, or a nutria or a muskrat could burrow in, create a little hole, and then the water flowing out of your pond will carry plant fragments and seeds with it, and it'll flow into another stream or a pond.
I think I see some over there. But how do I find out for sure?
First, you need to confirm that what you have is what you think you have. Now, that's real important. The first thing, the most important thing when doing weed control is to identify the weed that you have. Then you can find its most vulnerable spots.
And what you're looking for with a noxious weed is you're looking for some general characteristics. A lot of times noxious weeds are perennials, and not only are they perennials that can resprout from their root systems, but a lot of times they are also prolific seed producers.
Call the weed board. We're always interested to hear from folks, and the more eyes we have out there finding things, the better, to find things early so that we can get rid of them before they become enormous problems.
I think we've got it.
Now what?
Certain plants, digging is real effective. Hand pulling. Some of the plants we deal with are heavy seed producers, but they don't have much of a root system, so they come up quite easily. And if you can recognize them early enough, you can get them before they start seeding out.
And some plants they're easily gotten rid of, but most noxious weeds and most plants on the quarantine list, once you have them, they're fairly difficult to get rid of.
Digging and pulling is a fine answer for many weeds living in and around topsoil. However, dealing with aquatic weeds is much more complicated, and the control options are much more complex as well. Not just from the practical standpoint, but also in regards to permitting, licensing, and contracting requirements.
You can cut it down, but it will be back. It's got an incredible deep rhizomatous root system. There's a lot of energy in that root system, and a lot of people have been cutting it repeatedly, year after year, several times a year, and they're not having success. Unfortunately, with this plant, it's such a tough plant to deal with that people are mostly going chemical. They're mostly using herbicides to treat the plant.
Once you get it's expanded to where you're talking about acres instead of plants. Generally, diver dredging is a mechanical technique that works pretty well. The bottom barriers typically cost about 20 to 50 cents a square foot. which if you're talking about a small infestation is cost effective. When you start talking about large areas, you know, there's about 4,000 square feet in an acre, for example, and, you know, you're talking about significant amounts of money. And then there's a number of aquatic herbicides that are specifically designed to target different species, and they're generally pretty cost effective, but they have other issues. Like Whatcom, for example, is a drinking water reservoir. It may or may not be a tool that's even appropriate to use in a site like this.
Herbicides are a good tool if used correctly and prudently in the right situation at the right concentration. They can be really good tools, and they are designed just to kill plants, not other things. I really encourage folks to contact us for control methods if they have any kind of questions, because your time is precious, money is precious. You don't want to waste herbicide or time, and you know, get the best method that you can so that you save those things.
In the case of noxious weeds, the best control is prevention. No one wants to have to deal with an infestation. It's costly and time-consuming. In fact, we spend $100 million just trying to control aquatic weeds each year. So it's clear, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Most of the lakes with boat ramps, you know, around King County and south of here have Eurasian milfoil, and most of the lakes without boat ramps don't. So that's a pretty good indication.
It's very important for boaters to pull all their weeds and plants off their boats and trailers when they're leaving an area, a body of water. It's also important for gardeners to be careful about what they're taking home, putting in their gardens and their ponds. And you know, it pays to be cautious. Why not be cautious? It's costing all of us, either as homeowners or taxpayers, to control these plants. So let's start early and prevent it in the first place.
As the gardening season heats up, remember to keep these points in mind. 1. Get familiar with the weed list before you visit the nurseries. 2. Learn to identify the early stages of our most notorious invaders. 3. Know that what you plant can go beyond the borders of your own backyard. 4. Boaters, clean off your boats and equipment before moving them to another water body. 5. If you find something new in your yard or pond, have it identified.